kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm not going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. That line, so first fact of the night, friends, that line wasn't even supposed to be in the movie. That was one of our fun improv lines. So this feels like this happens a lot now that we're researching and doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Like the famous lines of the movie are just like completely improv'd by the actors. So fantastic. Way to go. The original line was something... The original line was something like really stupid. Let me see. I think I have it here. Say, apologies to the writer of the original line. The original line was supposed to be, "I am the night," and that's not as good.
Oh no,
that's not as good.
It's fine, but I mean, he's already put the fear of everything into those guys. Like, can we talk? So we're not going to really summarize Batman because
you should know. You should all know it's Batman.
Like, when did the comics come out? Like, before DC even bought them?
Paul, fact check this for us. I didn't fact check any comic stuff. I will raise my hand and say that I have not read any Batman comics. So if you're like a comic enthusiast here, Nat's got you covered. I am not Batman in that instance. And I will also admit to the fact that I am much more of a Marvel person than a DC person. And for years and years and years, and probably even until like last week, I was the person that was just like, ugh, Batman. And normally I would clarify that with like, but I really enjoy the 90s Batman movies and reliving this. 89 and then they're in the 90s. But then I rewatched this one yesterday and finished today. And I was like, yeah. Just these ones. Really not a fan of any of the other ones. And really just like the first two, I think. I don't know if we'll get around to watching all of them, but yeah, really just the first two.
There are things I like in this franchise, not the Dark Knight series, that we're not going to talk about today because it's a whole can of worms for Katie and I. But in this franchise, like I do, you know what? Even the nipply George Clooney, people hated it.
George Clooney.
Okay, so whereas this bat bodysuit has way too many abs on it, not complaining. But it's like, I don't know if you notice, like when they like show a close up of his body's armor, I'm like, what are some of those muscles? Is that anatomically even possible? Like,
I did enjoy that Tim Burton was like, a couple of rules for the suit. No spandex and no visible underwear, nothing tight, like tights. That's not like make it look as cool as possible. So this suit was like so cool. Yeah, don't Adam West this. So this suit was so like quote unquote cool that Michael Keaton literally could not move in it. Like he was like trying.
He's rather stiff in it.
Yeah, so you can see like his movements, which look slightly ridiculous watching them back. You know, watching them from today's perspective back. A lot of that is just because he couldn't move or probably even breathe very well in that costume. It was like completely smothering.
Yeah. So in the Clooney one, what I liked about it and what I thought going into it, I'm like, this is just very campy Adam West, like homage to Adam West, right? Like I didn't think it was supposed to be Tim Burton serious. Like I didn't think in my mind at all walking into the theater to see the Clooney one that it was going to be as dark as Tim Burton. You know, I thought Batman Returns was so dark, even though everybody loved it, that the studio was like, we're going to go a little more camp for the next one because it was a bit too dark when Danny DeVito ate a guy's face off, you know, like, so I don't know, people didn't like it, but I thought it was hilarious. Now, this one is also quite a bit campy. Let's remember the 80s of it all. I mean, like, Prince wrote some of the soundtrack for it, which iconic.
Prince did the like quote unquote did the soundtrack for this movie. Yeah.
Like iconic.
Yeah.
Kind of like similarly how Madonna around the same time did the soundtrack for the Dick Tracy movie, which I also love.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's
a good one.
One of my favorites.
I'll have to add that one to our list. You know what is funny about it? It's so prior to rewatching this one, I would have said like, oh, these are the like campy 80s and 90s movies. But watching it again, like I don't find it to be all that campy. We were talking right before we. It's colorful.
But that was also on purpose. Like they contrast. Like Gotham is so dark, and I love how Gotham, like in the comics, in this movie, it looks like some like dark 1950s. 1940s-ish kind of like with the architecture and the cars and even the costuming, but then there's also like some very like 80s early 90s costuming like
it cost them
into it. Like,
it cost them a fortune to build that set, and for a moment I kind of like forgot myself. So it's been a long short week, y'all. But I was sitting watching it. I started last night way too late, and so I knew I wasn't getting all the way through, but I was like half asleep watching this movie, and it started and I was like, wow, we're in gritty 1980s New York City, friends. Like, let's buckle up. And then I was like, oh wait, we're not in New York City.
No.
This is not New York
it's supposed
City.
to be a big city like New York, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of stylized on
but
that,
for a moment,
city.
I totally forgot. All right, well, we have our usual we're thankful for our usual live studio audience. The Tater Tots are here, even though we totally failed yesterday to get online yesterday.
That's my fault.
No, it was a team effort. I was definitely half asleep. But the Josh is here, who recommended this one to us. So huge shout out to Josh. And anyone can send ideas and thoughts along. But so Josh has been updating with some fun facts. I'm gonna scroll through his head. Oh yeah, he said they would use the "I Am the Night" in Batman the animated series. Batman debuted in Detective Comics number 27 in 1939. Holy cow!
Yeah. Told you it was a while ago.
It's older than me.
I'm like, so if you don't know who Batman is or what the premise of Batman any story is, like you've had a couple of like decades, almost a century to figure it out. So.
Oh, and here's a great throwback. It's not Throwback Thursday. We're Throwback Friday. Sad face. But if you've been following along with the Tater Tots, one of our all-time favorite people, Val, was singing for Lenny Kravitz the other day, and Dan says, fun fact: we have a 6 degrees of separation between Batman connection. Valerie backed up Kravitz, whose daughter was Catwoman. Yes. Correction. Quick fact, live correction. Yeah, which is hilarious. I did like one of my favorite. So there were a lot of really great facts for this one, and I put them up because I'm still not 100% awake, so I have them here in the background. But Michelle Pfeiffer was actually dating Michael Keaton when this movie was in production, and she originally was up for the Vicky Vale part. But I guess Keaton didn't want her to be in it because he was just, I don't know, concerned that it would be weird or hard to work with a girlfriend, even though they would have good chemistry. So they really added her in. And Kim Basinger is fantastic in this. Nat's got the Kim Basinger look tonight.
The iconic hat. I looked my whole life for this hat, by the way, guys. I only found it 2 years ago.
Yeah, you're ready.
My whole actual life. My whole actual life, I have consciously been like, I need the Vicky Vale black beret, the oversized beret. Found some like Milner, like West Coast Canada that makes them, and like ordered it off Etsy. Like I was like, okay, yeah, I'm paying money for this hat. I need it. Actually, very well priced. I'll have to look up the name of the company. All
right, we'll have to add that. We'll have to add that into the show notes. But yeah, anyway, to finish the thought, Michelle Pfeiffer ended up in the next movie in this series, which
her as Catwoman,
which is incredible. Amazing. Hilariously, she and Michael Keaton had broken up by that point, so it was still awkward. It was still awkward for the two of them because they had to have.
They needed a lot of tension.
Like tension, sort of chemistry, but not really. Tension's a good word. I like it.
Good chemistry, but also enemies. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. In this one, I have to say, Kim Basinger, besides having the best wardrobe. Period.
So this movie. Good.
Katie and I were rewatching it. She's like, is that a wedding dress? Did she just wear a wedding dress to Bruce Wayne's house? And I'm like, well, technically it's a ball gown for a fundraiser. But I'm like, I would wear it as a wedding dress.
stands out so much. I mean, I know she's supposed to stand out in that scene because she's fabulous, but so the scene, like everyone, granted, you are 100% right. They're all in like black tie tuxedos. It is a fancy event, but all of the women that are in that scene are all wearing like darker colors, and their dresses are like nowhere near as like. And she comes in like literally like the Barbie wedding dress from the 80s, like the floof sleeves and the floof everything, and she just
big
like
flowers.
Yeah. She just looks
amazing.
She looks fantastic. And yeah, I was like, I paused it and was like, sent Nat photos. Like she totally looks like they're like at her wedding. There she is ready to go. Yeah, and her outfits just
like
get
at the
better.
end of the movie, you had hope. Okay, can we talk about how awesome Alfred is in this movie? First of all,
he almost steals the show. Not gonna lie, like he might be my favorite character. And I love a background character. I love a background character.
My two favorite background characters in this are Alfred and Bob the Goon. Did you know Bob the Goon is his name? He was so ride or die with Jack, and then Jack shot him, and I was like, Bob the Goon did not even blink when you went from just a regular sociopath to like, I'm going to paint everybody's faces and just start mass murdering everyone. And Bob's like, I got your back. You know, like
that's the kind of friend you need. That's the kind of friend.
It killed him. God. So Alfred in the fundraiser, the party or ball or whatever it was at Bruce Wayne's house, Bruce notices Vicky Vale, obviously. And
how could you not? She was in a wedding dress.
Yeah, clearly. She's like manifesting. He's drinking, he shoots back the rest of his champagne. He's about to put the flute down on like a pool table or a craps table because it seemed to be like casino sort of themed event. And the glass barely hit the wood surface, and Alfred was like, yoink, right, like 2 seconds flat. And Alfred's like, not ruining the mahogany. Like, so low-key iconic in this movie. Also, even just how he's like, you should tell Vicky, because she's very, she's a photojournalist. Like, she's going to figure it out. So you might as well just tell her if you want to keep the relationship. Also, she's the only thing that seems to bring light in your life.
Yeah, stop being so alone all the time, Batman.
and then he literally just flat out tells her himself by bringing her into the Batcave.
Literally takes her into the Batcave.
Right? Like, without warning Bruce, like, hey, I'm gonna give her your secret. Like, and then at the end of it all, he goes to pick her up in the limo with chilled champagne on the way. Like, on the ready. Here's some champagne, Miss Vale. I'll take you to the Bat. Like, I love Alfred.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the casting in this entire movie is fantastic. I think
Jack Palance?
Yeah.
Jack Palance was the evil, I guess the less evil bad guy, to be fair. But, and it's funny because I'm like, he plays evil his whole career, this guy, right? Like, I only remember him as a bad guy in like every Western, every movie, like literally like 40 years he played just a bad guy. And Jerry Hall was in this, a supermodel / she married Mick Jagger. I mean, everybody married Mick Jagger at some point, right?
Who didn't marry Mick Jagger?
I mean, fair. He had all the charisma. So has. I didn't mean to say had. Knock on wood.
Still touring.
Poor Mick. Yeah. Please keep touring. But oh God, and who else was in this?
I mean, obviously that the big names we've covered. So Michael Keaton as Batman, Kim Basinger, Vicky Vale. Jack Nicholson as the Joker, which just absolutely iconic. I was trying to look up some more information. I may have to drop some additional things into the source notes after the show, but at least at a quick glance, and I want to verify before I give it as an official fact, but he holds like a preposterous amount of, so I believe 3 Oscar wins and I believe 12 Oscar nominations, which if the article I read was correct is one of the most, or at least maybe tied for most for the male actor category, which is just like 12 is pretty impressive.
That's a lot. Like that's an outstanding career. Like never mind.
Yeah.
nominations, but
And he really, I mean, so I'll say a few potentially controversial things. I do absolutely love Michael Keaton in this role, and I've said previously that like Batman is not my ride or die favorite superhero, but that aside, I think the bad guys in Batman, and particularly in this run of Batman movies, so in the this, starting with this one and continuing for at least 2 if not 3 of the movies, some of them are worse than others, the bad guys in this movie, and particularly Jack Nicholson, managed to walk the line of being like
too good for this part,
but just like
right, like his acting was maybe a little too.
It's not even that. It's
funny,
like
as much as he was dancing around and being all camp, it was so dark.
It's so dark.
Dark.
It's so dark, and yet like campy and silly, but like terrifying in a silly, like it's.
Well, the first
up
time
there.
you hear Jack rip that laugh out,
yeah,
like, ugh, full body chills, like not in a good way, like fight or flight way. Like,
yeah, he's creepy. I think my favorite scene in this movie with him has got to be the mimes. So there's like this scene where they're outside, like they're outside having like a press conference outside one of the buildings in not New York City, in Gotham City. And they're outside one of these buildings, and Bruce Wayne is there, and Vicky Vale is there, and everyone's kind of standing around, and he just like owns this scene dressed like a mime, everyone, like, which is the most preposterous like costume that they could have him in. I have to
say, the mimes were terrifying. Like, one mime, fine, maybe we're in Paris, it's a tourist trap. 2, we're getting a bit strange, but then there's like 10 mimes creeping up on this press conference. I'm like, no, we're all gonna die. Like, it's too much. And it's like, mimes are not supposed to be inherently scary. They're not really like, it's not it, it's not like that kind of clown. And I'm like, but they make mimes terrifying in this.
Yeah, and he always starts being like disarmingly like funny and campy, where you're just sort of like, wow, he's ridiculous, like he's dancing around like a mime, and you're like, oh my gosh, like what is he doing? And then it's just like, and now everyone dies, and you're like, oh right, he's a bad guy. Like for a second,
murder this one guy. Which talk about that guy having like cojones to go up against. So Jack Nicholson the night before, Jack Nicholson, his name is also Jack, his character. He introduces like all the heads of the different mob, syndicates or whatever in Gotham to the Joker, and to prove his dominance over this group, over Gotham, he legitimately, with one of those little hand zapper gag toys, fries somebody until they are charred bones. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then this guy the next day holds a press conference saying, I'm in charge of all of these companies, and what did you think the Joker was gonna? He literally fried somebody with a gag toy the night before, and you just, what kind of brain tumor did you have to be like, I'm just going to take over from him, even though he's obviously going to murder us all? Like, what?
Yeah, it's pretty, it was pretty great. I also, and I'm curious your thoughts, and live studio audience, your thoughts if you rewatch this one with us. So in that scene, which I adored, like was probably my favorite scene of the movie. I don't even really know why, other than the ridiculousness of it. Like the juxtaposition of it was fantastic. But so in that scene, after he just straight up commits murder yet again, Bruce Wayne is standing right there. And granted, he's not standing there as Batman. He's standing there as like mild-mannered, eccentric millionaire, billionaire, whatever he is, Bruce Wayne. But he just kind of like, everyone else is like screaming and running away.
He's calm. He's analyzing the situation. He's kind of outing himself as Batman.
He's kind of outing himself. But like even beyond that, he just slow walks up to the car. Like he doesn't like run up to try to stop him, or like
goes get Vicky.
He doesn't even like do anything at the car. It's not like he like walks up and like tries to grab him or like bangs on the window. He just like walks to the car. Like I feel like it was like, hey Michael Keaton, we need you to just walk up to the car, and he's like, I've got it.
Cool as a cucumber.
He He just kind of walks
Tighten your
right up to the
jaw,
car.
maybe glare a little.
It's very strange. Okay, well, Paul just said, so shout out to Paul who just gave me a cue for my favorite fact of the night. So
Yes.
Robin Williams was almost the Joker. This is what Paul said. Absolutely
Sort of.
true. But I have to read this, and I will drop this source into the comment, into the description and show notes afterwards so that you have it. But this is from CBR.com. This is an article about things you may not know about Batman, but it says exactly what Paul just said. So Robin Williams almost played the Joker. And this is the most depressing story. So buckle up. It says, before Nicholson, Robin Williams was offered the role of the Joker, and he accepted when the producers told Nicholson that Williams would get the part if the former refused. So Nicholson took the role, and Williams was let go, and he was livid about the entire
It's like
thing.
they cast him.
They like pitted the
as,
two
like, a
against each
bargaining
other.
chip.
Yeah.
Yeah. To get Nicholson to take the part. Yeah, it's
So
pretty gross.
it resulted in us losing Robin Williams, who was going to, or was in talks anyway, to play, I guess, the Riddler as like a follow-up until he found out that he was being
Would've been
screwed.
way better.
So he refused to play the Riddler in Batman Forever, and then he refused to take any other Warner Brothers picture roles until the studio formally apologized, which
Good for
is
him.
crazy. Like, yeah, absolutely good for him. But why would they
Make
ever?
him say sorry. Like,
Yeah, why would they ever try to
so
pit?
rude.
Yeah, pit those actors against each other and try like
No, it
both
works.
actors are very, very, very big names even back then. Like at that point, were kind of in the prime of their career. So, yeah, absolutely crazy.
It's disappointing on the studio part, but I mean, did any of us ever have the disillusionment to think that like Hollywood was a
fair.
friendly and fair place to be? Like,
It's kind of like
I
Gotham
mean-
City. Exactly.
I'm like, all the power to the actors who survive doing this job, because like
Yeah.
we all need it clearly for survival, escapism, just getting through the day and being entertained. But like it seems to be a terrible job, like from all accounts. So
Yeah.
it's pretty shitty that they did that, and we did definitely miss out. If Robin Williams was the Riddler instead of the other,
I mean, he
person
would
that
have
was
probably
cast,
made
oof.
an incredible Joker too, to be honest with you. But I just think he would have
Robin
done
Williams
an amazing
has
job as-
gone. He has gone very dark and very serious. Robin Williams in
Yeah.
quite a few roles. So like he would have had the range to do it. He wasn't always just the genie, Mrs. Doubtfire. Actually, Mrs. Doubtfire was pretty freaking dark if you rewatch that as an adult. Let's be honest.
Yeah, the things we thought are okay as kids were like, wait a sec, that was pretty dark. Oh my gosh, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I really think that Jack Nicholson did an absolutely incredible job in this, and I almost forgot how great he was until rewatching it, where he just like he captivates every scene that he's in, even like for the kind of datedness and the campiness of this movie.
I don't think it was though.
His acting like
Is it just me?
like exalts over it.
I like only, and I find after he played this Joker, with the exception of Mark Hamill, who's the animated Joker, who's, in all fairness, like I think him and Nicholson as Joker are like equal, for very different reasons. One's animated, one's live action, but also Mark Hamill, we love him. I found a lot of other actors playing the Joker after this movie basically just tried to copy Jack Nicholson. Like they're all just doing Jack doing the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
And one came really close, and that was the only other palatable Joker I think to date in a live action movie. But really he was just doing like his best to do Jack doing the Joker.
Yeah.
And like all the power to Jack. I mean, I remember him saying it's not something he would do if he had to go back, he wouldn't necessarily do it again because it really messes with your head. Like he's like, it really is a dark place to be the Joker,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Can we mention, like, is it just me or
Just you.
is Jack with his like flesh color, like when he puts on makeup to hide the white and green, like, is that much scarier?
It's
find
much
it so
scarier.
much creepier,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like,
much scarier.
Even before he falls into the vat when he's like still just a human. I'm like, oh god, young Jack Nicholson is terrifying looking.
Yeah, maybe it's because of like other roles he's done, but I like never fully trust him as I think a person. Like, I'm sorry, Jack Nicholson. Maybe you're like the most lovely possible person out there, but there's like something about his look where you're just like, I don't know. I feel like at any point he's just gonna turn around and do something. He's a little bit on that line. But yeah, no, I'm with you.
There's some actors that often play evil, like play psychopaths, sociopaths, whatever, that sometimes you're like are you maybe too good at this part? Like, is there some sort of thing that we just, you know what? I don't want to know. You were too good at this part. It was, anyways, he was very good. I think for me, the creepiest scene in this movie was, so after, like, at the end of the movie, they're running up the church, running up the bell tower, and Joker and Batman are fighting, and Batman saves Vicky Vale, and like, which also, like, they're falling off this building. Okay, so they're falling off like the bell tower of a huge Gothic cathedral. Okay, and
as you do,
as one does when you're the Bat. To remind, so Batman is human, but his sort of, like, the reason he has skin in the game other than his money is he's a genius, like an ultra genius.
Yeah.
So you see that in the scene where they're falling. So he and Vicky are falling because the church, the part of the church they're hanging onto is crumbling. They're falling. He manages to grab onto her, get his belt, like his utility belt, shoot off his thing, save them. Like, the fact that you can have that much self-control and like to think this, to analyze the situation and to execute a plan in like seconds before you splat on the pavement, incredible.
This though was like the moment that I had to do like a pause and be like, turn to Dane and be like, Batman's kind of an ass though, right? Like, because in that scene, he like literally looks over at her and he's like, how much do you weigh? And she's like, 108. And he's like, calculates, and then like grabs her, and then you know, whatever. So then they come back down, and then he's like literally says to her that he doesn't think she weighs 108 pounds. And I'm just like, really, Batman? Like, we really need to do that right now? It was kind of, there's the moment of late 80s, early 90s camp. It was just like, come on now. Come on. It was great.
Yeah, so when the Joker finally falls to his death and he's like slightly smushed into the pavement, his laugh box is going off.
That was creepy.
So it's like, it wasn't just him laughing, but he exaggerated his maniacal, creepy laugh with a laugh box. And to hear it kind of broken and just on that laugh loop, I was like, oh my god. Like, I've seen horror movies that are funnier than this shit. Like, Tim Burton, that's really dark. Like, it's so creepy.
It's also Tim Burton, like, you know, obviously now means a lot more than it did then. I mean, the big thing that he had done right before this, which is the only reason he got this ability to be involved in this movie, was that he had just come off doing Beetlejuice, which was much more, popular than I think people thought it would be. So, but it's. Yeah, it is pretty impressive. Like, looking back at it now when the names were going across the screen, I was like, wow, all right. I forgot how many people are in this. And I mean,
think
Tim Burton definitely brings his Tim Burton darkness and and Tim Burton knows how to create a vibe.
This one too, I find.
Yeah, he like it's funny because it doesn't feel like as Tim Burton, quote unquote, as like his later movies would. Like, if you think about like what a Tim Burton movie is, but it is Tim Burton in that he is wonderful at like creating a full experience where like the city like felt alive. Like every part of it feels like a character. Like, I think he really does a brilliant job with that.
Even like some of his scenes, he like frames. Like, he frames everything, like when Jack is leaving Vicky Vale's apartment, and it's like she's standing there in the window, the arch of the window, in the arch of the building, and then it flips to him, and he's like in the arch of the doorway, and everything's perfectly centered. It's just very
Beautiful
Tim Burton
scenes,
and
yeah.
very beautiful to look at. Like, I love his framing is really spectacular.
Holy cow, with her apartment for like
Yeah,
how do
I'm
I
like, how much money does a
she doesn't need
photojournalist
Bruce.
make?
Exactly. I'm just over here
Right?
Googling like photojournalists in the late 80s question mark. Like
Mind you, she did seem to be like a war correspondent type photojournalist. Like,
well,
when
no,
you
she
get a
had she had
glance at
like
her portfolio and stuff.
well, her
She seems to be
portfolio
famous.
yeah, she seemed to be famous for the one she did the one like series of photos from the war, and then everything else was all like Vanity Fair, like fluff, quote
Yeah.
unquote stuff, at least according to Jack.
And stalking Bruce Wayne because, she slept with him on the first date, and then he kind of gave her the brush off, and she's like, "The French is that? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna stalk the guy." I'm like, oh dear God.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I looked up in my typical Katie fashion. I just was like IMDbing all the actors. I was like, where are they now? What are they doing now? Kim Basinger is still smoking hot. She's 70 and she is I will never be as smoking hot as Kim Basinger is right now at 70. It's incredible.
I was thinking, so the scene where she gets invited to the museum by Bruce, but it's actually the Joker inviting her.
Yeah.
He saw a pic, basically, her level of pretty, like of gorgeous, is dangerous because the Joker just saw a picture of her and he's like, I'm gonna take her.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do everything I can. Like, I want to kill the Bat because he gets me more news coverage than me, and I'm going to steal this woman. I'm gonna just take her life. Like that's crazy. And it's just because she's so hot.
Yeah.
In the museum scene, which I love, so it's choreographed and they come in, which one of his goons, my favorite of his goons other than Bob, is the guy that his only job is just to carry around the boombox. Did you notice him? He's in a lot of scenes where he's just holding a boombox. And I love that. I'm like, that is the stupidest. Anyways, the 80s. So they go into the museum and the Prince song is playing, and I find, so they're sort of retouching up all of the art. Like, I gasped, like clutched my pearls.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to watch.
They throw paint at the Degas. I'm like, oh, not the Degas. But the most deranged part of it, two things. One, as they walk in, the Joker just gently tips over a statue with his walking stick. And it's just so gentle and like so purposefully gentle. It's like he's deranged to the deepest level. I don't know why that scene made me think. I'm like, he is like Hitler level sociopathic.
Yeah.
Like, why that's the scene that made that go home for me, I have no idea. Like the mass murderer was fine, but that tip in the statue, I'm like, he's nuts. And then also,
I do love that he went after like the makeup and hairspray, and you had to be using them
and
together.
Shampoo, deodorant.
I
It's
love
like
the
you didn't
scenes
know
of
what
all of the
combination it
newscasters
was.
looking like zombies, like actual zombies, like they're like sweaty and puffy and like broken out and like awful.
Why did that
It
guy
was
have
so
like the
good.
largest zit on his face
don't
of
know.
all time?
Like, the
I'm like,
makeup
how did
would
you?
not-
It was a cyst.
Solve that. Like
I'm like, 2 days later, it would not look that bad.
yeah.
But so in the museum scene, this is what gets me. So Vicky leaves a message with Alfred, who immediately tells Bruce she's going to be like 10 minutes late to get to the museum. Bruce is like, oh, we're not supposed to meet. Something is wrong. How far is his estate that she goes through the whole trauma of the Joker showing up? Like, clearly he's late for the date, so she thinks Bruce is standing her up. And then by time the Joker finally shows up, like, why does she sit? I mean, the choreography was great as they're dancing around and stuff, but she literally just sits there. No fight or flight response whatsoever.
No.
Like, she's just deer in the headlights, like, which is great. And like, she's shaking and she's like so good. But I was like, run and hide? Maybe run and hide. Like, no.
Yeah.
And the Bat finally shows up.
He does.
Like,
he does take a
how far were
preposterous
you?
amount of time, given that he has like planes and cars, and like he's got like every conceivable thing to get there
Not just
faster.
any car, it's a Batmobile.
Well,
Like,
yeah, but he's got a
I'm sure it
plane
goes
as well.
faster than an average car.
Yeah, I mean, if he was walking, he would take him a while in that suit because he'd be like like sporadic jarring movements. Yeah, exactly.
I love also so when he breaks through the skylight in the museum and he kind of like grabs her to his side and she makes like a little startled like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, same girl, same.
Same.
Like,
Same.
like that was, I don't know how intentional that was, but it was just like, yeah, that works. I understand.
As Kathy
I
said.
understood her reaction.
It's a good old fashioned damsel in distress. She plays it really well because she does, I think, a really good job of walking a good line of like badass, but also like enough in distress to make it fun to see.
Yeah.
Josh says parking in Gotham
call
City very expensive, even for the Batmobile. You can't just leave the Batmobile anywhere. I mean, you could, but why? You know.
I have to say, like, Vicky Vale, she like goes where there's trouble to get the shot, like for her job. So she's like really, you know, like has the instincts and the faculties, and she's obviously top at her job. And then she calls out Bruce for like trying to ditch her, like after basically a one night stand when he did like his darndest to woo her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can we talk about that date for a second? So they're sitting in this preposterous dining room at a table for like 100 guests.
Which she's not shocked about because she's very wealthy herself, as we've proven. So
clearly.
It's all good.
And they're sitting at opposite ends of the table. And at first I was like, what a dork. Has he never been on a date before? I'm like, oh no, he's just very clever Batman. Clever little bat. Because then it's like super awkward. He cracks a joke, which makes her feel at ease. You know, like, I don't think I've ever been in this room, which then puts her at ease because he's not like pretentious and snobby. So then she doesn't feel like super out of place.
Yeah.
And then he takes her to the kitchen and they sit with Alfred. He pulls the Alfred card.
Yeah.
Swoon. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And then he snuggled her. He snuggled the bat snuggles.
Yeah. But then he ditched her.
Clever.
Because the bat also ditches.
It was also the 1 year anniversary of his parents' death.
I know, and I feel like for a journalist, it like really wouldn't have been too hard to put two and two together, right? Like she's standing there watching him set two flowers onto the ground, and she's done, you would assume, some level of research on him because she was like they're trying to learn about him. Yeah,
Immediately go to the archives.
It's
and
not until like
what happened
later.
On that street.
It's like decently later in the movie where like her journalist sidekick guy is like, he was like, oh, you didn't hear about like Bruce Wayne's parents dying? And you're like, what did you think he was doing? Like he was just like wandering through the streets setting roses down for fun. Like there's no like it's other
like,
thing that was.
He had a very important meeting that day. Like, and it's funny because when he goes to sort of like, because Alfred spurns him to tell her the truth.
Yeah.
And he's trying to figure it away. I'm like, he really could have just said, look, it's the anniversary of my parents' death and I take it very hard because they died when like he could have just told her that truth instead of the whole
public
truth.
knowledge.
You know I mean?
She really should have known that. Like,
but also we haven't talked about Knox. So he's the journalist. He's like the plucky journalist that kind of gets under everybody's skin. But
he's my least favorite. I can't tell if he's my least favorite character or if I just didn't like I feel like the actor played him as if he was like a younger Dan Aykroyd, and I was like, I don't care for this. Like all I could see and hear was like someone trying to be Dan Aykroyd, and I was like, I don't like. I mean, maybe that's just the character.
I mean,
but I'm like,
it's the character. He's supposed to be plucky and annoying and like to get to the story. He's chasing the story that like he's also a bit of a nerd, right? Like he's chasing the story and everybody thinks the bat is fictional, like Batman's fictional.
Yeah.
I mean, he got proven right in the long run, but like you know, like everybody in the office is making fun of him and he's also like trying real hard to punch way above his weight with Vicky Vale. Like, I'm sorry.
He does try. And
it's like, you don't even get friend zoned because she didn't
you're
even
not really
notice
friends.
you.
Yeah.
Like,
you're not really ever going to be friends.
She's more than a 10. And it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what your personality's like. She just didn't notice you. I'm sorry, sweetie.
Yeah.
In the premise of this 80s movie, it's not really like that necessarily in real life, but Anyways, he did end up being such a good guy at the end. He gets her safely in the car during the parade when all the gas balloons are being leaked. And he gets a good N95.
I know.
Even in the 80s.
I did love that scene. He's got the mask in his car and a bat. I was just like, way to go. Way to go.
Well, I mean, he is an obnoxious reporter, right? So
Yeah.
he needs a good self-defense unit.
And that city is like not okay. So
Terrifying.
it's a terrifying city.
And he goes and he tries to bat off the bad guys that are masked and holding down like the balloons that are killing everybody because they're gassing them with the poison. Like, that was pretty heroic and like kind of a nice guy. It was a turning point for his character for me, where I was like, okay, so you're not just super obnoxious.
Okay, you've won me over. I think for me it was just mostly there's something about like his mannerisms and voice that just like reminded me of Dan Aykroyd, and it bothered me. I was like, I can't look or watch you. And
You're not Dan Aykroyd.
No one else in the movie. The only other acting in the movie, and I don't even think it was acting so much as like makeup, is we played this clip at the beginning of the episode, but the two like guys at the very beginning of the episode where he like comes down and says, "I'm Batman." They looked literally like zombies, by which I mean like they looked like they had died days ago and were back to life again. Like, I'm like, I know that they're supposed to look like they're like down on their luck, but they were way beyond dead. Like the makeup team
they
took
were
them
like living
way
on the
beyond.
street and like
They looked dead.
Clearly on drugs, like
past that. Like they really
You know
the team
what?
just tried too hard.
What made this movie quite dark, and it also makes me question, like, why was this movie popular with children? What were our parents thinking? Because it's really dark for a kid. I didn't think it was
I don't think I would let my kids
when
watch
I was
this.
a child. But it was like, I mean, I had Batman collectible cards I'd get from like a pack of gum, like you did.
Yeah, but that was
baseball
because
cards.
I think a lot of that though comes from the fact that it was tied to comic books, and the comic books
are pretty dark too.
Yeah, but it's less. I think the comic books are less like violent. I think it's different seeing it in the movie.
Yeah.
In the
live
movie
action.
format, live action, than it is. So I think a lot of it was like, oh, it's Batman. That's a comic book, so that makes it a kid thing. And I also think, and I could be wrong, maybe someone in the studio audience can fact check quickly for me, but I think this movie was released before they came up with when did they come up with the PG-13 rating? Because I think at that point there was like G, PG, which was all of the movies, and then R.
Parental guidance.
Where it was like, you guys figure it out. We don't know. It's maybe you could let your kids watch this if you want. We don't care. Like,
I do remember when we were younger thinking it was hysterical that any movie with any kind of sexuality in the US was always like rated R, but it was like PG in Canada because but like violence and guns was rated much harsher in Canada.
Yeah.
And in Europe than it is in the US, which is like, I always thought that was so wild. I'm like, you guys have all the guns, but you're super prudes. Like, what? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But, so at the beginning of the movie, Batman not just tells these, like beats up these guys for robbing a family and terrorizing a family. He puts the fear of God into them.
Mm-hmm.
He taunts them, he stalks them like prey, like he like really legitimately terrifies.
Well, it reminds him of like that they are coming close to reenacting what happened with his family.
Parents,
So that's like probably the worst. Oh, there's Paul. Oh, I was wrong. Oh no, close. I was close. The ratings came out in 1968. PG-13 was added in 84. So PG-13 was added right before, within 5 years, I guess, before this.
I feel like from the psychological terror and violence of this movie, all the mass murdering, maybe it should have been PG-13, but it definitely wasn't.
Oh, Kathy's in with 86 as the date. Well, now we're gonna have to battle it out. We'll have to see which was correct. Still both before
regardless, it was
1989. Before this movie came out. Oh, 84. Okay, great, Kathy. Kathy agrees with Paul. We're okay.
But and I love the lieutenant as well. He was just like telling Knox, the reporters, like, what's going on? Is the Batman real? And he's like, nah, they've just been chugging Drano. Was literally like, I know he was a corrupt cop, but like, he's like, no, these guys are like, have literally been driven insane. They are drooling, bumbling mumbling, like they've actually had a mental break
Yeah.
because they encountered Batman, and the guy's like, no, it's just Drano.
Yeah.
Like, what? Oh, it's crazy.
Oh.
It was a good, pretty scary movie.
Yeah,
But also
see,
super fun and entertaining.
very entertaining. Well, Josh said, and I think this is similar. So like I don't remember when I saw this, to be totally honest with you, but Josh said that he wasn't allowed to watch this or Batman Returns when he was at home because his siblings were really young. So your siblings actually not too far off from my brother's 1988. So yeah, not too far off in 90 and 91. Yeah, I watched a lot of movies
My
at
brother was obsessed with this. Like
friends'
he had
houses.
the whole little bat, like he had like a little bat utility belt and mask, and we had like all the toys.
I feel
Which
like
the little Batmobile was metal back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Because, the 80s.
I feel like we got merchandised a lot of things that maybe I wasn't necessarily allowed to watch when they first came out, and like after time, like once they were rentals, like when we could rent them at the movie
we watched
store.
this on rental for sure.
We watched this on rental. Like I feel like my parents were pretty lenient. We didn't go to like a ton of movies because movies were like expensive and a thing, right? But so until we were like teenagers and could do it ourselves, or but when we were kids, we didn't like go like family movie at the movie theater very often. But we rented movies like almost every weekend at my house. But like that gave my parents though control over the remote control, right? So like my where there was a lot of like there was a lot of like pause, close your eyes. I'm gonna fast forward this part. Open your eyes again. Like it's like we weren't in control of it, or we went to a friend's house whose parents were never home, and then it was fine. You watch whatever you wanted. Yeah,
there's a few movies where I remember we were watching Ghost, and my dad paused it, and my dad wasn't a pause. He was pretty chill. I mean, I watched Rocky Horror when I was 11.
Yeah,
I don't know if you realize that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I had a lot of questions about it, so he paused Ghost and was like, yeah, Natalie, you can't watch this movie. I'm like, we're literally halfway through now. I can't watch it. Like, what? What?
Why though?
He's like, Natalie, go upstairs. I'm like, okay. So I make a show of going upstairs, and then we have like a split level house, and I was just sitting like listening to the rest of the movie because I was like, what do you mean? And also Mermaids. I couldn't watch the end of Mermaids, but I'm like, but it's Cher. I guess there was some adult sexual content. My dad's like, go upstairs, kid, you can't watch this.
Well, what gets me now, as like now that I'm a parent, two things. One, my memory is now horrible, but two, a lot of the movies I watched were the like made for TV versions, which, as many of you, if not all of you, watched.
They edited stuff out.
They edited stuff out. They edited swearing out, and they cut down. They cut out scenes because they needed to like be able to fit within the time frames, and so there's like lots of stuff where I watch it and I'm like, wow, I don't remember like this movie, like I don't remember any of this. And I'm like, oh, okay. I thought I just didn't see that. I only saw like the made for TV version, and that I had like recorded onto my VHS tape and then was able to fast forward the commercials out like that. That's what I remember.
I remember seeing Mission Impossible in theaters and then going home and telling my mom how amazing it was. And then it was on TV like several months later when it was like on rental, and then they played it on TV, and my mom's like, oh, you said this movie is good, let's watch it. It's on whatever tonight. And I was like, yeah, sure. They cut out the scene that they cut for commercials is the one scene where they explain the whole plot. Like somebody screwed up, because my mom's watching it, the movie ends, credits roll, she's like, I didn't get it. And it's like, they cut out the one scene.
You're like, let me explain this to you.
Where Ethan explains the whole mission and like what happened. And I was like, oh my god. Like bad so we missed things on movies that were edited for TV. They did not always do a good job. True
story. Well, we've gotten to the end, so everyone listening and watching here in the live studio audience have to drop in what your potato or bat, you could put bats, I know you like to play along, what amount of bats you thought this was. I don't remember what I gave it because, as I said, I'm a little out of it this week.
I didn't even think about it until right now.
Look down.
So, I don't know.
I will say, regardless of what, when I click over, is revealed, I think it was I think it holds up. It's incredibly entertaining. It was fun to watch. It wasn't so dark that I felt like it wasn't still an escape. I feel like that's my line. I feel like, and we won't say a ton about this because Nat and I have very strong feelings about this. We don't want to screw over anyone's feels, but we definitely like this is our generation of Batman movies. I feel like this is our Batman, and I feel like the newer ones were so dark for me that they were not fun to watch. Like they weren't like an escapism, and this one was like interesting and entertaining enough, and it wasn't like so dark.
Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's some of the newer ones, not the most recent one, but like when you take away, and I know it's technically canon to some of the comic series, which there are different like storylines that don't intersect in the comics, but
yeah,
like when you take away Batman's genius, which is his basically his only skin in the game, like you take away his genius, I'm like, and you're just some rich guy who works out, like it's and you have a genius who works for you, but like that doesn't, no, it didn't make sense because I'm like, Batman's one big thing is that he's a genius.
Yeah.
I mean, he has money, but he has money because he's also a genius with everything, you know, like with his business and with his, anyways, whatever. So like taking away his genius I was not a fan of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Michael Keaton is Batman.
Michael Keaton was great.
Shout out to Seth, what's his name? Seth Rogen and Zac Efron in that movie that they did where they're like, I'm Batman, I'm Batman, I'm Batman. I'm like, Seth Rogen was right. Yeah. I'm sorry, Zach. Sorry.
Well, the thing to keep in mind, A, we just said it. Michael Keaton was the one that said, I'm Batman. And without that, we have nothing. And then B, he also was the actor who, because of his kind of like normal guy size and stature, it was him who thought through and kind of applied the like lower register I'm Batman like voice that we all make fun of now as we're referencing the movies, like his normal I'm Bruce Wayne versus the like I'm Batman, that kind of stuff that has become just so iconic. That also started with Michael Keaton. So I just think, yeah, I don't know. Doc says the thing that made Batman relatable is that any of us could be Batman with a loan, a lot of loans, many loans. Yeah, and I think Kathy's right. I think the newer, darker ones were meant to appeal to the comic fanboys. Hey, Josh, there you go. Comment. Josh is with us. I was gonna say Josh is was the comic book guy, but yay, he's here with us.
Yeah, I mean the Dark Knight series I wasn't a fan of that in the comics or in the movies, but I mean like they were well done. It's not that they were, and they were very well acted. Yeah. Well, you know, I actually
the one fact that we didn't mention, but we should, since we're talking about kind of the difference between the comic books and the newer movies and this one. This movie also has Joker as the killer of Bruce's parents, which is not canon and not in the comics and not in any of the later movies either. It was actually Tim Burton that added that in. So, and
which is amazing.
I thought it worked. Like, I think it really made, like, it made this movie stronger because it pitted these characters against each other in a much deeper way, like, and it kind of gave them a little bit more of a backstory.
And that line, what was that line? Do you dance under the pale moonlight?
Yeah,
the way Jack says pale moonlight, like it's two separate words.
Yeah.
Do you dance under the pale moonlight? Like he's such a nut job.
He plays crazy.
I also loved the scene where they're in Vicky Vale's apartment and Bruce Wayne is there as himself, and he gets himself shot, but he had on some like
he put the silver tray or whatever it was, pewter tray.
It would have had to have been pewter because silver's real soft, but anyways, for it to stop a bullet almost. But when he goes, you want to go nuts? Let's be nuts. And like that whole exchange between the two of them, I was like, that is amazing.
It was absolutely amazing.
It's very enjoyable. I give it 5 bat taters.
All right. Well, Josh gives it 10, so he's with you. 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, same percentage. Paul gave it 3 bats, which I love that he's in the bar. I think that's what I put, but I think now that you say that, I think I'm over to 4. I'm thinking I'm gonna give 4.
Yeah.
So I'll update. Oh, I don't exist. One sec. There I am.
Katie disappeared.
I disappeared.
Okay,
I'm
she's
back. I'm back. But hey, let's live edit.
Live
right.
agitator.
Let's Here we go.
Yay.
Oh, we've made a T. It's kind of like a B, but not quite. There we go.
I love your podcast logic, your podcast math.
My podcast math. My podcast math. Oh, I love it. Yeah, see, yeah, and Josh is right. Like the Burton added it in so there'd be more of a personal connection between Batman and the Joker. Yeah, it's strong.
And I like that it was
start.
the he didn't recognize his face. Like in other retellings of the Batman's parents being killed, he always recognizes, like, I'll never forget that face kind of situation. Whereas this, I mean, he was a little kid, right?
Yeah.
And it's that line when he starts to think about it in his subconscious.
Yeah, the line worked really well. Yep. Yeah, because
I'm
it's
like,
creepy
that's
and memorable.
so much more.
Yep.
It's more realistic. I'm like, you're not going to necessarily remember the face of somebody from, I'm sorry, my alarm's going off to tell me to take my oopsies.
3 bats from Doc. Thankfully, we're at the end now. Jeepers. We're gonna lose. We've lost 6 podcast listeners. Gone.
It's the wrong day. I don't have my alarm set for Thursday.
Oh, back to my fault again. We do say
no, it's
most
totally
Thursdays. I needed time to watch this one. And Dan will be proud of me because I was also behind on watching Grumpy Cat, but I finished that. I finished Grumpy Cat. I finished Batman. I read Josh's blog. I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll, everyone. Kathy is with me for, and Josh is agreeing with you. You get all of all the correct facts tonight, Nat. You're being live fact checked correctly. Well, you and I talked after, or before we started recording about what we should do next week. I have I have two thoughts because every time I watch these movies, I like pluck out an actor where I'm like, now I want to see their other movies. So the actor for me in this one is Michael Keaton. And originally I was like, we need to watch Beetlejuice, which we absolutely do. But then I also really love Multiplicity. So I put those two up to the group. Multiplicity is like one of my favorite movies. It plays like on repeat in my head.
You used to watch it all the time when we were kids. And I'm
all
like,
the time.
Is it that good though?
It's not.
I mean, like, we were how old? Like,
but it
8?
is.
And I'm like, is it that good? And Katie's like, I love this movie. I'm like, all right, I'll watch it again. I don't mind.
It's not good. It'd be the one that's like hard to rate because it's campy. It's sort of like what I thought this one would be, but this one came in stronger than I remember it. Multiplicity I have seen more recently than when we were kids, and it's campy, but it's just fun. It's like the kind of comedies that we've lost that like is fun to rewatch.
I just want to say Doc's comment. Same Doc, same. Also, I have to say,
okay, Doc and I are in for Multiplicity.
Oh no, not that. His previous comment, Doc.
Oh,
I guess we're
fine.
doing Multiplicity.
Fine. No, we can do Beetlejuice. Let's do Beetlejuice first, and then we can do Multiplicity afterwards. But
Doc, for our listeners, said I might just be way too much of a Marvel fanboy for DC's storyline.
This was my problem.
Same.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I was way more into Marvel comics.
Yeah.
Much to my father's
chagrin. It was all
X-Men. He was a bat. I loved X-Men as a kid. Well, that 90s cartoon.
Yeah. Yes.
With the best theme song for a TV show ever. Now it's in my head. So my dad loved the Batman comics growing up. And then I think the point where I was like, I am done with Batman is Batman kills Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Like he just kills him. He weakens, like he like literally kills him. And then because that was like a huge shock, they bring Superman back, but he's not really Superman. He's a cyborg. I'm like, DC, we're over. Like goodbye. Goodbye, DC. DC
is really...
DC in the 90s had a beef.
like, DC has really struggled. Why? Yeah.
Batman is an asshole pretty much all of the time.
Yeah.
As a Canadian, I love Superman because even though he's technically owned by DC now, he was invented in Canada.
He was.
So we love him. He's a national treasure.
I do love me some Lois and Clark Real Adventures of Superman. I really wish that show had not been canceled. And we don't know what happens. It's a cliffhanger. I rewatched it recently
What?
because I have them all.
Remember.
I have them on DVD, and I had forgotten that it ends on like a crazy cliffhanger, and I was like, no,
No.
because I was very, 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 very invested. Well, everyone is voting for Multiplicity.
Well, then we're gonna do Multiplicity next week.
Okay, we'll do Multiplicity
will
and
watch
then
it again.
Beetlejuice.
Yes,
Um,
and then Beetlejuice.
because we need to prep because there's all the talk of Beetlejuice 2, and we need to dive back. Fun
And I'm
fact about
still thinking from
Beetlejuice.
Home Alone.
Yes.
From Home Alone, I was thinking of Beetlejuice because Catherine O'Hara.
Yes, Catherine O'Hara
O'Hara's in both. Love
was
her.
in both, and Josh now loves Catherine O'Hara because he was rewatching both Home Alone and Beetlejuice. Yeah, I do own. I think they're up in the attic. I have like a like metal case, so you know how everyone then and now are still into Pokemon cards, which is over my head. But I owned like a Pokemon card style case, but it's filled with every Beetlejuice card that they made. I don't even remember like why though, like what the point of the Beetlejuice cards was, but I own all of them, so I will bring them to the Beetlejuice episode in 2 weeks.
I have all the Batman cards from this movie. I have the whole collectible collection.
Well,
I
you
think
need
it's
to take
the
a
only
photo
card collection.
so we can put
I
up
have
on
to
Instagram.
Find them, but
Find
yeah,
them.
I have them. Josh, actually, I misremembered, and Josh corrected me. Batman didn't kill Superman. It was Doomsday. I remember. So in my head, I have this image of the cover of the comic, which is probably why I'm misremembering it, where Batman is kneeing Superman in the back, and his back breaks in half.
Yep.
So I don't remember what fight that was. So I'm misremembering his death to do with that comic.
Oh,
So
see, you were doing so well.
I'm gonna you know what? I have it in a box somewhere. I will go dig it out if it's not moldy because it's been sitting in a box for a long time. But
All right, well, we did it.
The only comics I preserved were my X-Men ones. Oops.
Oh, well, thank you to everyone for hanging out with us in the live recording, and to all of our listeners and viewers. You can find this show at our brand new website, the VHSClubPod.com. You can find it on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. It exists on video. I was looking it up today, as I do. You can watch the video on Spotify. I thought you could watch the video on Apple, but I must have done something wrong. So that to come. But you can always watch video here on YouTube anytime. And we do our live recordings most Thursdays at 9 p.m. And if not Thursday, then we let everyone know that it'll be Friday. So here we are. Here we are Friday. We're doing just as good as ever. And this episode will drop tomorrow morning, first thing.
Sometime. When you get up. No rush.
When I get up.
Not gonna rush it.
Yeah.
No. I just love It's a 6 Degrees podcast.
Yeah.
That's how we decide what we're doing next. That's brilliant.
If you join the live studio audience, you can listen to Nat and I decide what we're going to do next week and potentially have some input. Josh swayed us for this week's episode, so there you go.
How many times did somebody from Gotham kill Superman? Because now it's like Bane did it. It was in Nightfall. Guys,
Night, Josh.
you know what?
Definitely
I'm not
knows.
going to Google it. It's probably happened 2 times.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.